Hey. So today I wanted to go over things that you can do before and during your trip that's going to make it a lot more easy and streamlined to create your content once you are back home. So let's jump right in. One thing I'm not going to go over too much in this video is pitching brands, but I will say if you plan to pitch brands and work with, hotels and tour operators and different things, I recommend that you pitch those collabs at least 3 months in advance. And by the way, I know this whole pitching thing can be really scary. It can be really intimidating, especially if you're new to it. It's like, what do I say? Well, I have a free resource for you. It is a free brand pitch workbook. I will link it in the description of this video, but it's going to help you really map out amazing pitches and just simplify this process and make it a lot less scary. Really think about your strengths and what you can bring to a collaboration. Maybe it's having a really well-defined niche. Maybe it's having high traffic, a high engagement rate on social media. Maybe it's a certain skill like your photography or videography skills. So think about that, make that clear in the pitch. And if you're a newer creator and you're like, well, I don't really have an audience yet, consider pitching a UGC or user generated content collaboration. What's great about these is you can make money for the content you create, but you're not getting paid for your influence. So you don't need to be an influencer. You don't need to have that audience because it's not content that you're necessarily sharing on your channels. It's for the brand to share. So that is an option too. The other thing I just want to mention about pitching brands and tourism boards and different people you might want to work with is to make it clear in your initial email if you are asking for payment. I have a course on landing paid press trips. I have a few different working with brands products. And in those, I have interviewed a lot of different tourism boards and PR reps and brands that work with bloggers. And one thing they all said that consistently came up was they hate when they are talking with a blogger or an influencer about working together. And they think that it is going to be a trade kind of collaboration. Hey, in exchange for this hotel stay, you'll post on your channels or whatever. And it's really upsetting when 2, 3, 4 emails down the line, they start saying, okay, well, here's my rates. And, you don't have to, in that initial email, just say, hey, I'd love to stay at your hotel for 3 nights. And in exchange, I want this much money. But you can say something like, if this sounds good, I'd love to send over my rate card, or you can attach a rate card in that initial email. Or maybe you say, hey, I'd love to know more about what you're looking for so I could send over a proposal with my rates. Just make it clear that money is going to be part of the kind of collaboration equation. So beyond working with brands on, paid or trade collaborations, however you're doing that, something I highly recommend is doing keyword research before your trip. Doing this keyword research is just going to make it a lot easier for you to know what topics you might want to cover and research and photograph, versus if you do your whole trip, come home, do keyword research, and then you realize like, oh, brunch spots in Rome is a really good keyword. And if I had known that before, I would have checked out more brunch restaurants and taken more of those photos. So you still want to stay aligned with your niche, think about your audience, think about things that you would genuinely love to do when traveling. I'm not saying if there's a keyword for best history museums and you don't love going to museums and your blog doesn't really cover that you should. Stay aligned with what is true to you and authentic to you, and that would make sense for your niche and audience. Okay, so let's come to key search. And let's say we're going to Dublin and we want to do that research. You can just even start with, a little seed keyword here. Start broad, Dublin travel. You could do Dublin itinerary, things to do in Dublin, Dublin attractions, Dublin activities. Think about your niche. Maybe you cover food. You could do Dublin restaurants. So you can start there. And then you can filter to find easier keywords, because Dublin travel, of course, would be very difficult to rank for. It's very broad, highly covered, especially by tourism boards and things like that. So you could always filter for easier keywords. Key search has a score system. So actually, if we come back, you'd see they've scored Dublin travel a 56. The higher the number for key search, typically the more difficult it is to rank for. This score is just gives you a little indication. There are other things you want to think about when doing keyword research, but it is a good kind of initial indicator. So let's try to find easier keywords. We could say, okay, keywords with a score up to 39, and I want Dublin to be in the keyword because we're writing about Dublin. So then you could filter there and try to find keywords you might want to rank for. Maybe you cover solo travel. I also did a video on this deep dive tool where you can also just quickly, so we can look at it here. I think it already searched it, but let me just, there we go. So, okay, Dublin travel, and now you can quickly find the long tail keywords here, the more specific keywords that are typically easier to rank for. Bus travel from Belfast to Dublin. You can also filter, and something neat with the filter in the deep dive tool. Dublin, we can stick with what we had before. Okay, easier keywords. But you could say domain authority is less than, let's say 35 in the top 5 positions, meaning in the top 5 positions, there are not just these huge, gigantic websites. You'll have an easier time getting into those top 5 results. Okay, so no results found for that, but you could kind of keep playing around with it. I did mention this in my other video. I have found that sometimes this isn't fully accurate. It is a brand new tool also, so I'm sure it will get better with time. But I've just found that just because in that search it said there were no easier keywords with a score of under 39 in key search, and with websites with a domain authority of less than 35 or less in the top 5. If it said there were none, that's not necessarily 100% true. Like, let's do this again. Oops. Like, well, I don't know. Let's try that one. So, okay, it was true for that, but as you kind of play around, you might find some ones where there are smaller sites in the top 5. So just play around with it. I mean, right now it's kind of being pretty accurate, but I've kind of found that it isn't always. But I do really love that deep dive tool, so, check it out. You can also do a competitive analysis. So go to organic keywords, type in the URL of a blog in your niche, your competitors. Of course, as bloggers, I know my competitors as a solo female traveler are also some of my best friends as bloggers, and I really love them. But, we still cover a lot of the same things, and we're usually competing for spots in Google. So you could search the whole domain, but you can also add filters here. So if we're going to Dublin, maybe we say, okay, what do they have about Dublin? And I would also, I didn't put it there, but I would also fill out the rank. So you're just looking at keywords in those top positions, like in the top 10, maybe in the top 5. All right, so now I could toggle for position and volume and start to see if there are any keywords here that I might cover. So in short, you just want to do the keyword research beforehand to get some ideas of what you might cover. It's going to make it a lot easier once you are in the destination. And one reason that this is so important is it's going to be easier to take relevant notes. So now we're moving into what we're going to do during the trip to streamline things. If you're going on a week, a 2-week trip, and you think you're just going to remember everything, come back, and it's just going to flow from your fingers, I find that so challenging. I need something to work with, even if it's just a messy draft or a messy blurb about something I did. It still doesn't feel like we're starting from absolute scratch. And I'm sure there are details and experiences and things that are really going to help your post stand out, show your authority, show your expertise, make it different from what already ranks, that you're going to want to remember to include. Okay, so here's an example from Mongolia. I did keyword research. I realized I did want to do a things to do post. So you can see this is not a fully written post, but it's me making little notes to myself during the trip of things I did, things I might want to research later, like, okay, there's something I'm going to want to fill in here. Maybe this is an indication like, okay, tomorrow go ask the guide like what that wooden thing was. And it's just a messy note like this, but it's so helpful. Here's another example from my trip to Bali. I knew I was going to do a guide to Ubud. So these are just my notes here. So here you see I write XYZ a lot in places I need to fill in. I forgot what this rice field was called, but I found out I had my driver's name who took us there. And it's just information that I'm going to want to remember to potentially include right there in my phone. I can copy and paste this into WordPress when I get home, and I have something to work with. Now, the other thing that I do during the trip is I kind of cull my photos, at least the ones on my phone. Now, when you're on a trip, you'd probably take thousands of different photos. Some of them are duplicates. Some of them are really bad. There's ones you know you're not going to use, and there's ones you know you definitely want to use. So the end of each day, I go in and I favorite my favorite photos and clips from the day. These are now going to be the photos and images that I am going to actually use on social media. Now, your workflow might be a little bit different. I personally shoot all of my blog images. Sometimes I use phone images, but most of my main feed Instagram images and my blog post images are shot with my Nikon. I also do shoot with a 360 camera for some extra footage. And typically my phone content is for social media stories, TikTok videos, things like that. The occasional blog post photo, maybe I was somewhere without my camera and I took it with my phone. So these are going to be the images that I'm going to work with for my stories and my TikToks and things like that. Now, I also have a video on how to organize your photos after a trip. So I will put that in the cards up there somewhere. So you can click on that if you want to see how to really streamline your workflow when it comes to your photos and also organize them for the future, because it's going to come a time where you might want to re-find that photo from your trip to Bali. Or maybe you have the opportunity to sell your photos and you're like, oh no, where are they? Did I accidentally delete them? You want to have that all nice, neat, and organized. So check out that video up there somewhere. I'll also have it in the description of this video so that you can have a good workflow for that. And if you have any questions about anything we went over in this video, make sure to leave those below in the comments. Also, make sure to subscribe so you get future updates when videos are published, sharing tips and strategies for travel bloggers who want to grow their traffic, community, and income. Happy blogging!